Hey Laowinners, it's Laowinners here with another stream. For those of you who are tuning in now but have to leave maybe a bit later, don't worry, this video will go up after I'm done. It's going to be a little bit different format this time, so I'm going to cover the topic first. After the topic is over, you guys can ask me questions. I'll be answering everything. We'll do super chats and all that kind of stuff. If you feel the need that you must post a super chat like during the topic, don't worry, I'll go back in the chat history and go back and actually read those and answer those questions. So first off, I want to cover a few things. I open my notes here. Today, we're going to be talking about how China is influencing the West through soft power and propaganda and evidence that I've seen of that, as well as addressing a very, very serious question that I got at yesterday's subscriber meetup of all places. And that is, what are my future predictions on China and how, the government's going to carry itself out of this kind of mess it's in right now, and maybe how China is going to look in the next few years to the next 20 or 30 years. Obviously, I'm no expert, but I thought long and hard about this and the evidence that I've seen, and the things that I see trending and happening in China right now, what I think the next move is for the actual CCP and Chinese people in general. First off, I want to say thank you to anyone that's tuned in right now that was at the San Diego subscriber meetup last night. Quickly give you a little story on that one. We went to our friend's barbecue restaurant called Focus Barbecue, and he had just opened up a new chain of, a new branch of his chain in San Diego. Jun Lee, fantastic guy. We told him there would probably be about 20 people there, because that's about how many messages Winston and I got for people that said that they're going to show up. And the line for this place was literally out the door into the parking lot. And we felt so bad. We've never seen a turnout like that before. It was absolutely insane. I cannot tell you how many people showed up, and it was super humbling and crazy. And I'm just like, I was just reeling. I'm like looking around. I'm like, I'm literally a guy on the internet. And all these people showed up to talk to us and like hang out with us. And it was really, it was really awesome. And I had so much fun with you guys. So if you're in the chat right now, I have to say thank you to everyone that showed up. Check my gain real quick. Okay, next order of business. I got to say thank you to everyone that's been with Laowinners. If you're a new subscriber, you'll probably realize that I just hit 300,000 subscribers. For the old guys that have been there since 1,000 subscribers or 25,000 subscribers, you'll understand that this was a pretty big growth, a massive growth for my channel. Really appreciate every one of you that's been there, whether you're new or old. I'm assuming that you've noticed quite a difference in the content that I put out, and that's because I've been doing it so long. If you look at a channel that's been out for like a year, maybe the videos about a year ago aren't going to be a whole lot different than the videos they put out now. And that's because, you don't go through a whole lot of growth in a year. But when you do it for 7 years, I was a pretty young boy when I first started. So the content has changed quite a bit. And I appreciate everyone that's stuck with me and my family throughout this entire thing. Quick update on the pregnancy. Vivi's due date for Lucia, my next daughter, is January 2nd. However, she has been having some contractions and feeling like this might come a little bit earlier. So sometimes the doctors aren't always right, because she feels like she could give birth any day now. So we've been packing up. We will be leaving this area, Southern California, and going back to New York, where our doctor is. We have locked down a doctor. Everything's taken care of. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be a very different experience than China, but I'll definitely keep you guys in the loop for that. So, like I said, at the end of this topic, I'll open it up to a traditional Q&A, but I'm going to just jump right in right now. Let's just jump in, guys. Okay, so topic, how China is infiltrating the Western media. First off, I'm going to give you the very important brief history of the Communist Party of China. You don't have to be interested in history to want to understand this, because it pertains to how things might go in the future. So basically, 1949, we know Mao Zedong, the guy in the money, right? The donut-haired dude on the big red 100 RMB, actually on all the notes on Chinese currency. He was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party and basically led the revolution against the Nationalist Party, which now is in Taiwan. They've actually just been reelected. So they are now still the Republic of China under the KMT, which is the Kuomintang, the Nationalist Party. The Communist Party took over, and we had tyrannical rule. I mean, we know the history. If you've studied, outside of China, you'll know that Mao was responsible for atrocities and ridiculously gross expectations of the populace, competition with the Soviet Union to try to meet quotas. That led to the demise of millions of people. And those principles shifted over time. But until he died, until he left office, literally left office, you didn't see China improving a whole lot. Then you got the next guy to come in, Deng Xiaoping. Now, Deng Xiaoping, famous quote that he might have said or might not have said, "To get rich is glorious," opened up China, specifically Shenzhen, to market capitalism. All of a sudden, China is not really communist anymore. It's got like authoritarian principles. But now Deng Xiaoping is this hero because China's now not poor. The people are not really starving anymore. People are able to make money, trade currency, open a business, all this kind of stuff. So Deng Xiaoping comes in, and yeah, you had things like 1989, you had Tiananmen Square, where he, squashed the student protesters that wanted democracy for China. That blunder aside, he's seen as quite the hero, especially amongst the younger generation of Chinese people, because it's the only reason that China kind of pulled itself out of the ashes after utter destruction and famine and all this kind of stuff in the 1949 to the 1970s. So Deng Xiaoping, quite the hero. Even in Western eyes, like if you look at Western publications and history, Deng Xiaoping is considered to be a rather positive character in general, just because it made China enter the global stage, enter the world stage, and be treated as, I'm not going to say on equal footing as first world nations, but at least someone to be reckoned with, someone to trade with. Now, this is the problem, is that if we jump ahead to when I got to China in late 2008, you would really think that trajectory could only go up. And I'm going to say this with 2020 hindsight and taking off the rose-tinted glasses. When I moved to China, I would say under the first leadership, under Hu Jintao, and I'm not championing this guy, but under the first leadership that I was there for, it felt like China could only improve to the point where it could be a very, very awesome place to live, earn money, and integrate into. Of course, Chinese society and culture prohibits, the idea that a foreigner could potentially become a Chinese person, but that's not really what I was after. I really saw this almost regression of the West. I mean, when I left, the economy was in pretty bad shape in the US. So when you enter this burgeoning economy, everyone's making money. Everyone's got potential. There's like schemes left and right. There's scams left and right, but there's also avenues for wealth left and right. So when I was there under that first leadership, things weren't blocked. Things weren't censored. There was still, human rights atrocities going around the country. It was China, after all. It's still under the CCP's thumb. It's still under one-party rule. But that being said, it really felt like there was hope. It felt like there was a lot of hope. A lot of people will look at my content, look at SerpentZA's content, they'll look at ADVChina's content, and they'll say, why the negative uptick in videos? Like, why is your content becoming more and more like you feel downtrodden about China? And that's because there has been a palpable shift to the point where I've always avoided talking about politics and sensitive things. And now it's almost impossible because it's affecting the daily lives of the people that I care about. Me being in China, potentially my wife, and my career and what I do, right? I owe it to my subscribers and to my fans and to my patrons and everyone out there to not report on things that that to compete with news outlets or anything like that, but just to be honest about actually what's happening. And I had a pretty heartfelt question that I've gotten a few times now from a subscriber at the subscriber meetup last night in San Diego. And he was like, you don't have to, you don't have to be totally upfront about this, but what do you see China as a nation in the next few years? Where do you see it going, right? And I really, really thought about this. And I wrote down some notes here, and this is kind of how I see things going right now. So you had Deng Xiaoping, like I said, opening China up to the rest of the world. Everyone's like, okay, China is going to dabble with democracy. Maybe things will open up. Doesn't happen, but China does open up trade-wise, right? You have the the next president, Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, the next two presidents, very undramatic time period of China. Very big economic growth. People are still getting rich. It looks like a good things are happening. And all of a sudden, you see Winnie the Pooh come into power. And when Winnie steps into office, immediately the rhetoric changes. I remember people getting really excited about Xi coming into office. I remember people being like, this is the change that China needs to not only use its wealth, to use this newfound success, but to capitalize on that and then make a domestic economy, make a domestic military, make a domestic country, China, as a force to be reckoned with in the world stage. That's obviously scary to someone who is not Chinese and is living in China. Nobody wants to hear that kind of stuff because that promotes blind nationalism. That's when the news outlets start blaming other countries for its problems. That's when you have things like housing market crashes and protests being blamed on the outside world. We have the older generation that has been brainwashed and taught to hate Westerners, now coming out of their shell to kind of release some of that hatred. And you do see it. I mean, I've been called out multiple times on the street. It's usually unfounded. It's not people that know who I am or what I do, but it's people that are genuinely xenophobic, right? You'll get that anywhere in the world. I'm not here to claim that China is the only country that hates outsiders. You go to some rural areas in America, and the people might be quite nice, but they might be wary of outsiders as well, right? That being said, this was happening in big cities in China. So this very, very nationalist rhetoric started to become the general blanket feeling of being in China. So that was the first negative. And this is kind of where I see it going now. I see these numbers coming out about the economy, right? They're claiming, you know what, it's just middle income prosperity. We don't need to get rich anymore. We just need to make sure that we make enough, right? It's just we need to be a middle income country. They kind of want to see this wealth gap shrink a little bit because it's quite alarming. You see a Ferrari and you see a donkey cart on the same road, right? And that's not an exaggeration. So when you have this kind of income disparity and then these slowing down numbers, the government starts feeling like it has to manipulate stock markets. It feels like it has to, put in measures to prevent people from flipping houses because property investment's always been such a big thing in China. You see this big housing bubble. You see this weird downturn in free capital and entrepreneurial businesses springing up. And I went from watching people bragging about how much money they're making, showing off their new house, their new car, all this kind of stuff, to seeing WeChat moments on my phone of these very wealthy people that I know now selling their paintings out of their house. I see these people, downgrading from their Mercedes or BMW and now buying a Buick minivan. It's not something like the end of the world, but there is a very large percentage of people that I would think are very wealthy in China that are losing quite a bit, or at least not willing to take the risks that they would take previously, when I first got there. So I see China entering kind of a middle income trap. I see that that's going to be a thing. And I think the leadership, Winnie knows this. And the only way to keep order, because really when you promise people under a one-party rule that you need to trust the party and that you don't need freedom of speech, you don't need democracy and these things that the West has, because we will take care of you, because we will guarantee growth. When you see that slow down and people's lives, start being affected by this, you start to see unrest. And the worst thing that could happen to China is go through some serious unrest. So the leadership isn't stupid. The leadership knows this, and that's why you see a regression. That's why you see not just in the economy, but in rights, in opportunity, in freedoms. You see a regression in this because the party needs to legitimize itself to the public, and it also needs to make sure that people don't freak out when things start to slow down. So that's going to happen. And I do see a big uptick in the promotion of domestic goods. So whereas Chinese brands in the past, I would say only people on the really low income bracket would want to buy a Chinese product, because for them, it's kind of like a loss of face. It's like, why would you buy a Xiaomi phone or a K-Touch or something like that when you could buy an iPhone because it's much better, right? Nowadays, you'll see WeChat videos of very wealthy people that are smashing iPhones, smashing BMWs, or smashing Toyotas, and smashing, foreign brands products in lieu of buying, Huawei or maybe a Chinese SUV or something. Although the very wealthy will probably never do something like that. You do see a kind of a bolstering in the want and need to buy domestic goods, and that is definitely promoted by the government right now. So that's definitely a thing. Domestic economy, they're going to focus on that big time. And this is the most interesting thing. And this is something I'm quite confident about. And I hope there is a chance in the future that I don't have to get called out on this, because this is quite damning and a little bit worrying. Just a sec. I'm drinking seltzer water right now because my throat is dying. I'm super sick. There's a cold going around here. But I see the current leadership, Xi Jinping, I see him replacing this cutthroat capitalism that China's kind of grew itself on with like Mao era strongman communism. I'm talking like more Putin-esque stuff, right? That Xi Jinping is now the leader. He's the top dog. And maybe the theory of the party and the theory of like, we need to unify as Chinese people under the CCP is much less important than the theory of coming together under his thought, under Xi Jinping thought, right? I think there's going to be a big transition. So I'm seeing this. I think that Xi Jinping right now, and you're seeing this right now, even in places like Shenzhen, is going to push the party rhetoric that the billboards for Nike need to be now replaced with follow the party. These are the party's principles. You must back the party. You're Chinese. This is your duty as a Chinese citizen. I see a lot of that happening. And I see hammer and sickle statues and, insignia everywhere. I see a lot of championing, anti-Japanese rhetoric, pro-communist theory, Marxism. And then I think that that's been broiling for a little while now. I think what we're going to see now is actually a dismantling of communism. And this is my bold claim. This is what I actually think. And there's some evidence to back this up. So I actually think that instead of saying Marx was a hero, Mao was a hero, Deng Xiaoping was a hero, I think you're going to see him getting rid of that history, or kind of covering it up in favor of promoting Xi Jinping thought. And Xi Jinping thought might be more similar to something like Hitler's Germany than something like communist Soviet Union, right? China's not dumb. They saw the fall of the Soviet Union. They saw that communism wasn't cool, right? So I see this dismantling happening. And this is one piece of evidence. When I was teaching in Inner Mongolia, I'd have these students and they always had to go to these like Marxist and Maoist thought classes, like once a week. They'd all grumble, and it sounds ridiculous. It sounds like North Korea, but they'd have to go and listen to like Mao's Red Book stuff and Marxist theory and all this kind of crap that they, didn't really care about, much less believe in. And it was just, it was something they had to do to pass school. Then all of a sudden, you get this whole like pushing of like, this is really important. Your nationalism depends on you caring about these principles. Doesn't really catch on. Then you have like a core group of students that actually want to push for unions and Marxist theory and this kind of stuff. Like people that actually believe in, the Communist Youth League of China, these college students going out and being like, why is our Marxist class shut down? Because it was removed from one of these universities. So they go out and they protest and they're like, no, bring back the socialist principles of Marxism, which is what the party was founded on, right? The CCP. Now these students were, they were taken down. They weren't wiped out Tiananmen style, but they were taken down. They weren't allowed to protest about this, and it's being hushed up, which I find really interesting because a group of students like this in the past would have been fully allowed. I mean, it's pro-party, it's pro-communism, it's pro-CCP. But I really think there's going to be a big transition where the current leadership doesn't want that theory to overtake his theory, what he thinks is important, right? So I actually think that's going to happen. There's all these posters going up now that instead of like a big hammer and sickle now, it's a sun replaced with Xi Jinping's face, like Mao era stuff. And that to me is quite worrying because I don't see that propaganda working on the younger generation. And I also think it's like it's a sign of a super big regression back to a time where China was just completely alienated from the rest of the world, by its own decision. And I'm quite worried about that. But that is actually my kind of my theory of what's going to happen. I think you'll see a lot less communism and a lot more Xi, because when you have this natural progression of leadership in China, and then all of a sudden he slaps himself with lifetime rule, that's kind of damning and showing the world that this might be China going back to the old days. So there was this conference that he put on last year. And this is old news. This is 2017, but I want to go through his 3 core principles and how they're actually being put into action now. So he had this conference called the Thought Conference last year. And these are his 3 points. I'm going to read them here. His number 1 point that he addressed to the party was to promote a positive view of China and the benign perspective of the CCP's authoritarian regime. So these are the words out of his mouth, right? This is what his goal is to do. So basically, they want this world view of China as it's okay to have authoritarian rule. It's totally fine. At the same time, it is necessary for the world to not only fear China, but to respect it, right? And you see this now. I didn't see a whole lot of English propaganda about China in the past. It was always usually focused on like talking to their own citizens. It was like, Chinese people, this is what you need to believe and why, because you're Chinese. Now it's like soft power videos on YouTube. It's news articles. It's English media, right? I saw this video the other day put out by the government, and it was in English, and it's like this cutesy little cartoon. It's called How to Make Leaders. At some point, you guys can go watch that. Basically, it's just crapping all over Western democracy, how it's all corrupt and how you need tons of money and you'll never be president, ignoring all like low-level politics and stuff, because in Chinese people's minds, politics means that you're at the top and that leader makes all the decisions, right? They don't see someone like Obama or Trump having checks and balances. Chinese people will look at them in the same way they look at their own president, right? So this video aimed to dissuade, Westerners from believing they could ever be, a leader in the Western free world, which obviously there's some degree of truth to that. I mean, it's a shot in the dark, right? But the fact that people do have a say was completely ignored. And then they go into how Xi Jinping came into office and made it sound like anyone can do it. Start from the bottom. Anyone with a good education can join the party and work their way up. We have lots of experience, and it's definitely not through nepotism and corruption. And it's a really funny video. It's also it kind of triggered me a little bit. The thing is, I don't see something like that working. I don't see the massive millions of dollars being poured into New York Times billboard ads promoting Chinese news agencies. That's a massive waste of money. I don't see that working either. But I do see something working, and that's towards the end. I want to share some thoughts about something that I was quite alarmed about. His second point in his Thought Conference was to encourage foreign investment in China and openness to Chinese investment abroad. So this is kind of paving the way for the Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, right now with the trade conflict, we're going to see a massive slowdown in foreign investment in China. It's tit for tat because they're making it really hard for foreigners to get visas to even do business in China right now. And I don't think that China's Belt and Road project, basically all these little micromanaged funds that pave China's influence in developing countries nearby, Bangladesh, African nations, Pakistan, I think you're going to see a massive decline in positive viewpoints on this project. I feel like you're going to see a lot of people that change their tune on the Belt and Road project when they realize that a lot of these investments are just propping up many authoritarian systems in these countries that have a pro-China stance. And I think you'll see a lot of local people getting pretty pissed off at that. These promises that never come into fruition. You see a lot of promises and they look really good. I was talking to someone yesterday that was like, I think this Belt and Road Initiative is going to be a good thing. Really, I take a negative standpoint on that. I see what happens when massive amounts of Chinese money goes into something and it can be a wild success like the high-speed rail system. And it can be a massive failure, like the millions of apartments that are abandoned in ghost towns that are already crumbling. I mean, Winston and I did a video where we went to one that was only 3 years old and everything is falling apart, basically made of cardboard. So basically, I think that the second principle is like a key feature. I think Xi Jinping, or at least CCP, wants huge influence in developing countries to legitimize its rule and also to kind of have a stronghold in other areas other than China, because China's traditionally not had very strong allies, right? Excuse me. So number 3, and this is going to sound the most weird and scary to a Westerner, is to marginalize, demonize, and entirely suppress anti-CCP voices. And that's a quote. To marginalize and demonize and entirely suppress. These 3 words are very negative. You wouldn't use these in a, I don't see, you know, a Democratic leader getting on the podium and being like, we will suppress everyone's voice if it's against us, right? Very, very anti-democratic value, very common in China. And there is, and there has been, a huge uptick. That's my word of the day, apparently, uptick. In Wumaos, people paid to go out there and leave bad comments on my videos and things like this. Huge uptick in that. Tons and tons of pro-China newspapers and propaganda abroad. You walk down the street here in San Diego, actually, go downtown, some of these areas, you can find, you know, the People's Daily in English. And I mean, I feel like nobody's buying those newspapers or reading them being like, yeah, you know what? China's right. Definitely. Xi Jinping is the man. You know, the West is really bad. They look around and they're like, man, I live in a real shithole. You know, I don't think that's happening, but I do see a lot of these soft power, I should say, attempts, these full page ads in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal that are written in the same font as the rest of the magazine or newspaper. And they say this is a paid advertisement by so-and-so, People's Republic of China, but it's small. And to the average reader, they might flip through that and they might see like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know he was such a good dude. I didn't know China was going to do this. I didn't know China was the future of this and this and this. So there's a big uptick in this kind of stuff. I'm not necessarily scared about that kind of stuff, but it's pretty damning that all 3 of these points in his thought conference have kind of been addressed and have been a centerpiece of his policies. So this could be really interesting to see how things go from here. And it makes me worried. You know, you see things like the what's happening in Xinjiang, Western China. I won't touch on that, but you can look it up yourself. But you see things like this where the West and other countries can't do anything about these issues. It's not their place, right? China manages itself. You can't get too much involved in a nation's domestic affairs, but it's pretty crazy the amount we've seen change under the new leadership. And it's just, from my perspective of living there, it went from a 9 out of 10 positive experience to a like 2 or 3 out of 10 pretty negative experience very quickly. Even trying to not pay attention to politics and things, just the general aura and feel of being in the country was declining, you know, and it makes me fear for anyone that does express themselves, maybe artists, maybe journalists. You're not going to see a whole lot of independent art and journalism come out of China in the next few years, I don't think. That's just my opinion. So to kind of this is my big point. I wrote this article on Patreon the other day. I wanted to share this with you guys because you might get a taste of, you know, you don't have to support the channel through Patreon, but I do post there every week. I do a post on Tuesdays, and then I do a $10 up tier video post every Friday. And I talk to and answer people's emails and DMs every day there. And I wanted to share kind of what the kind of stuff I talk about there. And this kind of makes sense. It ties into this whole thing. So I told you, I don't think this soft power is working. I don't think an educated Westerner or, you know, anyone from any country really would buy into this absolutely ridiculous Chinese propaganda. But I do think it's slowly working through things like, you know, the suppression and bullying of Chinese students abroad. I got this impression when I met some Chinese people yesterday at the San Diego Meetup. And the reason I say this is because I'm always shocked and impressed and really appreciate meeting Chinese people that have had some time to study abroad, because by and large, they don't carry super hyper nationalistic values. They're open-minded to the rest of the world, and they might find themselves changing in a way that I wouldn't even find myself changing. They see things for what they are, with a very balanced Chinese and Western perspective on things. And they take the time to learn English, and I'm inspired by these people. And I appreciate them so much. They have no idea in the conversations that we have. But my point is, I think that when these students go into these like Confucian institutes and get their scholarships paid for and stuff and go into these Chinese speaking areas of the university, all of this like pro-China propaganda pushed on them, and kind of the punishment for dissenting or having dissenting opinions in their essays and lectures and all this kind of stuff, because it might trickle back to their home country and it might affect their family or their social credit score, which is a whole nother topic. All these really, really scary things. I think there's like a slow kind of soft power with Chinese American students that, don't know if they can go back someday, or they want to go back someday. And I do think it's working with Westerners in a way that if they don't have a legitimate basic knowledge of China or the government or how things work in China, I think that there is a very big risk that slowly this kind of stuff might sway people's opinion. So you have that, like that video I talked about leadership. Maybe they might watch something like that and be like, you know what? That's right. Like why bother voting? I don't have a say. Like there's nothing about me matters in this world, right? China's got the right idea. They don't have to go through all this bullshit in these processes to get things done. Things happen much more slowly in America or in the West in general because things get voted in. There's bureaucracy involved. Whereas in China, someone makes a decision and all the money goes to that, and it might get done very quickly. So it might look inspirational. And this is kind of my proof for this. And this is something that bothered me quite a bit. So the New York Times put out an article, and it was called "The American Dream is Alive in China." And it's something that I could have bought into maybe in like 2009 or something. But I was kind of shocked, and you guys should read this maybe after the stream, to see this very pro-authoritarian rhetoric. It does address some negatives, but it's very like, this is why we have it wrong here, and this is what they're doing right. And I saw some merit in some of those statements, but by and large, I saw something really alarming in this article. And this was, written by an actual New York Times editor. So this is what I wrote. There's a popular phrase going around on the Western internet about how 800 million Chinese people have been raised out of poverty. That's like this thing that everyone says. 800 million Chinese people have been raised out of poverty. So my point is, who put them there in the first place, right? Now that means 2.5% of the USA population in China now does not have to worry about the low income and living standards that the majority of its population once dealt with. I'm not here to refute that. That is an incredible figure, and it's a feat accomplished in an incredible amount of time. Very, very admirable. I'll be the first to say that the city that I moved to in 2008 cannot even be recognized as the same city in 2018. It is truly astonishing. Talk to pretty much anyone, and despite some comments about simpler times, the very business and small and large business-oriented Chinese people are very happy with how life has improved. Now, these articles, like the one I just mentioned in the New York Times, there's a lot of these articles every now and then that China hates. And these are the ones that focus on the towns and villages that still don't have running water, still don't have electricity, they have dirt roads, they have single-room schoolhouses, high rates of disease, malnutrition, poverty, lack of healthcare, and all this kind of stuff. While I think these articles are important to bring awareness to these poor areas, by and large, China has improved its standard of living for a ton of people. And yes, this has predominantly benefited the Han Chinese, which is 90% of the race. And even the poorest of Han areas are getting a lot of extra love nowadays compared with the minorities. But that is another tale for another time. Now, the issue that I have with this New York Times article is who is being championed for this great achievement. China is a modern nation under the very same CCP that rules it today, was plunged into utter devastation and hell. And the jolly cherished Mao, whose fat donut-haired face plagues every banknote of the PRC, and his party were responsible for famine, poverty, the death of millions, environmental devastation, cannibalism, destruction of Chinese culture to its very roots. the restriction of basic human rights, and crippling the moral fiber of mainland China's future generations. A friend of mine once said, if I cut my finger and I place a bandage on the wound, should I be congratulated for healing? So congratulations, China, you destroyed yourself under, communist rule. Learn that trade with the West would make you rich, and now force your citizens to congratulate you for bringing them out of poverty. The danger in these articles, the one that I'm talking about in the New York Times, and ones that I've read multiple times, different Western publications, the danger in these articles is not to appreciate the people who don't suffer now because they're not as poor as they once were. That's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. The danger is patting one party rule on the back and congratulating it as if it's something to be envied in the free-speaking world. And that's how I kind of want to round this out. It's something that's been wearing on me for a long time. It's something that I wanted to address, and it's something I'm concerned about. And I hope my predictions are wrong. I hope things slow down and things work themselves out. I just don't know if I have faith in that. I'm going to open it up now to Super Chat questions. I'm going to roll back here, all the way back. It looks like Jeremy Clark says, happy holidays. You helped me learn a lot about my wife's country. Thank you so much, Jeremy Clark. I really, really appreciate that. That's super cool. I really, really hope that all of these Super Chats, I can actually go back and see them, because that would be really worrying if I couldn't. I'm popping out the chat right now and making sure that I can do this. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this topic. I'm ready for your questions. Firefly, I actually read that correctly. As an aspiring expat to South Korea, which way do you believe China is leaning due to their gridlock with the US and North Korea? I see traits of both, but I love your opinion. Thank you from Florida. So the gridlock with US and North Korea. I honestly think that you will see much less news about North Korea. I think you're going to see a lot more of these illegal coal ships breaking all these sanctions and trade agreements that China's agreed to. I think you're going to see a lot more illegal trade between the two countries, and then the West calling them out on it all the time. But I don't see China being like taking a side, especially right now. I don't think China's going to be like, you know what? Yeah, screw North Korea because we're going to go, align with the West on this one. They're also just not going to even talk about it. I think China's really closing in on itself to be a domestic power, domestic economy. That's what I see happening. I hope that answers your question. Really, really cool that you're going to South Korea. Winston and I will probably go there as well and shoot some videos. Really pumped to see it. Never had any interest previously. Looked into it a bit. South Korea looks like a blast. It looks like it's going to be really fun to ride around. So awesome. Canadian Stig with the $5 donation. Sorry. Really appreciate that. If you had a question, please put it down there. Jia Li Bai, $5. Thank you so much, dude. Going to Wuhan and starting a channel come February. Any advice on how to use social media in China to start making connections? Depends on what you want to do. If you're looking to make a, what's it called? Like a Chinese media presence. If you want to be famous in China, start out on platforms like Bilibili. Start streaming a little bit. Making connections with people that are already up there. You're going to have to find people and actually meet them in person. I saw a lot of people streaming out of bars in Beijing, and some of them are quite big. So even just striking up conversations with those people. Doing things very focused, like traveling to a certain place that you know that China wants tourism there, like Hainan or something, and approaching tourist companies like that, if that's the way you want to go. Food stuff always does well. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're a foreigner or an English speaker, I should say, in general, making videos in China, doing food stuff does very well. If you are not approaching the Chinese markets and you're doing YouTube stuff, there's a couple groups on WeChat and things that, there's social media creators. There's the guys up at Shanghai Expat and all that kind of stuff. You can talk to them. They're still very active in the scene. I hope that answered your question. There's quite a bit you can do. Nikolai 40 with $10. I don't see a question there. Super sorry. If you do have one, pop one in there. In the meantime, 300,000 subscribers is Do you know what that looks like? I was just thinking about this. Like, what does a stadium hold? And I'm like, imagine if that many people were in like one area. That's what like a channel is, right? It blows my mind and it makes me really nervous. It makes me really like, wow, I'm potentially talking to a really lot of people right now. You know, it's not like the old days when it was kind of like a conversation with 100 people. It's a really interesting dynamic. I'm not super good at it. Trump with 5 pounds. Me and my girlfriend really look up to your family. You guys are so damn cute. Keep it up. Well, I really appreciate that. I don't know if I'm cute, but I know my daughter is. She she's been very good at getting my attention on WeChat. So if I'm out, I was at the subscriber meetup yesterday, taking a little bit too long talking to all you guys. And she was sending me messages, voice messages. She goes, Baba, I miss you. Come home. Baba, say you are going to come home. Sends me things like this. And I'm like, oh gosh, I got to get out of here. Your entire demeanor changes when you have a daughter that's able to send you voice messages. Okay. Nikolai 40, $5. Are you finally going to get a dishwasher? You better believe it. When I actually have a place to call my home, where I'm based out of, I'll explain that later, by the way. Where I finally have a place, when I finally have a place to call my home, I will definitely get a dishwasher. Probably the first. No, the first thing I'm going to get is a clothes dryer, so that I can dry my clothes properly, not in the sun, because that is absolutely ridiculous. Thank you for that. David Aguirre, why didn't you and SerpentZA ever travel to Tibet? Well, I was initially going to go before YouTube, which would have been fine. You have to have a minder outside of Lhasa, the main city. The reason we don't go now is we film there, right? We already have a very, very strong eye on us, I can say, about what we do and where we go and what we film. So to film in Tibet would be a pipe dream, unless it was some sort of very jovial like tourism video, which is not really what we do. So I feel like it would be impossible. It'd also be impossible for us to go to any more sensitive regions like Xinjiang. We already ran into enough trouble in Inner Mongolia last time. So, I mean, if things open up someday, definitely. Oh, by the way, even though I'm sick, I don't want to drink on camera. But what I do want to do is just give you guys at least one cheers, and an old school cheers, because 300,000 subscribers is a huge deal. And I want to put some perspective on this. When I started, I would do like 5,000 subscribers. So now I got to drink 5 beers, right? I never thought it would go further than that. It's like, okay, maybe someday I'll have to drink 10 beers. If I use that same logic now, then I would have to drink 300 beers. And I guess I never thought that this channel would become that big. So I at least wanted to cheers you guys one time. And this time it's with Baijiu. I'm not looking forward to this, but it might clear up my cold, to be honest. I wanted to give you guys a massive, super heartfelt thanks, particularly to the old school OG boys and girls that were with the channel in the beginning. And I also wanted to say thanks to any patrons that are on right now, because you literally are the only reason that I can do this. So thank you and cheers, guys. Ganbei. Okay. Oh, just a second. I'm not a spring chicken like I used to be. Oh my goodness gracious. Sorry, just jumped down here. Old Gringo. Nice name. AU austerity kills. Large state capitalism is taking down Americans too. Job losses, student loan crisis, high rent, low wages, etc. Wall Street versus Main Street. You're going to see a massive polarization happening in pretty much every country in the world, whether it comes to nationalism or the way things are shifting. Populism, a reshuffling of social order. I just think that my perspective in America is not developed enough to be able to commentate on it yet. That's not really what I do, but I do think I have a pretty good bearing on China. So thank you for that. Thank you for expressing your opinion as well. It's nice to hear other stuff. Canadian Maker Project. So any plans to come to Toronto? I had a sub meetup in Toronto last time, believe it or not, last February maybe. And it was weird. I think I put out like a notification like 2 hours before, and I think like 15 or 20 people showed up. So that was really, really cool. Super awesome gang. San Diego and Toronto have been the best meetups I've ever had. The most genuine, diverse, and amazing crowd of people I've ever met. People from every country that came together under one country. Everyone's tolerant and awesome and cracking jokes, and it was just such a good time. So Toronto definitely is going to have another meetup because it was so awesome. I plan on spending a couple hours there. I think I spent, until like 12 o'clock there at night. It's awesome. I saw a really negative comment that I kind of want to address. Somebody said they're amazed at people that throw money at YouTubers for super chats. And it's kind of like this. What do you think you do when you turn on TV and you watch, gold diggers rush swamp bloggers? You're getting absolutely destroyed, for your market value for consumerism and commercial budgets, right? Whereas someone like me, a fairly small YouTuber, can get, these very generous and awesome donations, but also provide information directly to the audience and the people that give this money. I don't think you're going to find that kind of service elsewhere, and that's why people like you watch YouTube. So take a step back and just think about that for a second. It's pretty disingenuous to say something like that. Canadian Stig, what are your thoughts on China putting 1 million Uyghurs in Xinjiang and conducting ethnic cleansing in Xinjiang? Have you ever been to Xinjiang? If yes, how's the situation there? Never been there. Been to Western China, Gansu, Ningxia. Beautiful area. I love the desert regions. Very fascinated. You can guarantee I won't be in Xinjiang now. They'd never let me in, especially with a camera. I mean, the government knows who I am. I think they don't hate me enough yet. But if I was to go there and commentate on that, and again, like I can't have a perspective on that because I haven't been there. But if I was to go there and commentate on that, you would never see me again. There's been some decent footage coming out of things like BBC and stuff. And I would just pay attention to mass media for that right now because they have the budgets to send people kind of sleeper cell stuff and watch it from that perspective. I mean, I have a family. I hope you can understand. Obviously, if those claims are true, I mean, you'd have to be insane to be promoting that rhetoric and policy in China. So of course, that's a shame. Russ Rhodes. Really like both yours and SerpentZA's videos. My scope is broadened because of all three channels. Just wanted to support when I could. And thank you, Russ, for doing that. Very much so. Kind of exactly what I was just saying. It's what we do to get by, and it's the inspiration. This conversation is the inspiration, to continue doing what we do. And although we'd like to expand and get better and bigger in the future, I mean, this is what it boils down to. We're just two guys on the internet that lived in a place long enough to be able to commentate on it and to be able to maybe broaden people's horizons. Because my opinion of China before I moved there was very, very much in line with what you'd see on something like Fox or CNN. You go there and you form your own perspective, and that might actually become more negative or more positive after that, but it's more truthful. And I owe it to everyone out there to actually share that experience. And I appreciate you, people like Russ that actually can say thank you for that, because it makes me feel like I did a good job. I can have a little bit of pride in my work. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay. No name. Oh, sorry. Andrew Moore. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. It snaps down to the bottom. Just give me a second, guys. Sorry. Stop snapping. Okay, there we go. Snapdoodle, Snapdragon. Tim Glenn, do you see China leaving organizations such as the IMF, UN, and creating its own international schemes? If it gets to that point, like I said, I think that it has this aspiration and knows that if it's going to keep, blatantly and brandishing itself, like blatantly breaking international trade rules and things like this, and environmental rules with things like rhino horn and all this kind of stuff, as a basic middle finger to the Western world to get its own way, like a spoiled brat. I'm not saying China, I'm saying that the government. If they continue doing things like that, I think they need to form their own alliance. And I think that's what they're trying to do with the Belt and Road Initiative and that kind of stuff, is to pave their own influence in countries that need the help and need the money. So I think you'll see an attempt. I don't know if it will succeed, but probably, I don't know if something as extreme as like the UN, but probably you'll see China pulling out of things that beholden it to Western law or international law, I should say. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. Zheng, Do you think one party CCP rule mainland is sustainable? I do, Jung. I don't think it's not my party of choice. It's not a very fun party. I think that the self-preservation of the current leadership is the number one goal of China. It always has been. It's never been about like, let's make China a better place. It's more like, we'll tell you it's going to be a better place, but we're definitely not going anywhere. I think people will put up with that as long as, you know, freedom of speech is squashed, as well simultaneously as, you know, the economy doesn't completely tank. You know, if China isn't plunged into poverty, which I don't think it will be. So at least for the time being, yeah. K-Dragon 96. I'm coming to Aumen Dashue for my degree. Any tips? That is a beautiful and brilliant school. They make some amazing sandwiches of all things in the canteen. Tips: enjoy frickin' Macau. It is one of my favorite places in the entire world. It's a micro state. It's beautiful. It looks like you could be in Europe and China at the same time. People are really relaxed, especially compared to Hong Kong. Make a lot of friends. People are outgoing. A lot of people speak English. And yeah, just getting knee deep in that food. I mean, it's like Cantonese food with European influence. It's like the best of both worlds. Probably one of my favorite places in the world. Hang out on Taipa Island. That's the whole Portuguese type area. Great fusion food, great fusion culture. Check out the street racing scene. There's like this mountain on the third island. I can't remember what it's called. You'll figure it out. It's very easy to find. Nighttime street racing scene, which is cool, like hopped up Japanese cars. And just enjoy it, man. Get a 50cc scooter. You don't need a car there. Get a 50cc scooter, buy it for like $1,000. That is going to be your transport for the entire time. Awesome stuff. Seriously, so fun. You're going to love it. Congratulations. Cliff Lee, $5. Thank you so much, Cliff. Appreciate that. KPG, 490. $20. Thank you, KPG. If you had a question, try to pop it in there. I'll see if I can catch it. Thank you. Christine PFS. Might you consider putting the hand-drawn ADVChina logo on coffee mugs to sell? Please. That is not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. We have like passive merchandise below on ADVChina. So if you go to an ADVChina video or a Laowinners video, there'll be like some different designs of stuff. I believe there's coffee mugs there, but it's not the hand-drawn. It is a hand-drawn logo, but it's not the same one. It's something I will definitely consider, though. Let me take a screenshot of your little request, and I'll definitely look into that. Thank you so much. Next, Robert Score. Who wins the current trade war? Woo boy, this is getting this chat's getting rowdy. Robert. Yeah, yuck. I used to love that stuff. I think I was just a kid bragging to myself. Robert, who wins the current trade war? You know who wins the current trade war? Nobody. No, I'm joking. Definitely not China. Definitely not China. I've talked to fairly high-profile businessmen now that were so angry at the trade war because of how much it's costing their company that have now contacted me on Skype chats and said, this is probably the best thing that's going to happen to American companies to even out the situation. I'm not a businessman. I don't know, potentially. I mean, I don't know, you know, how things work like that. But I do know from the conversations I've had with these people that work, you know, do business in China, they've ultimately changed their perspective on the whole situation, that things are going to have to bend in the West's favor. To be honest, it's for too long. It's been, you know, from the moments that we started people started doing business with China, it was kind of like, we're dealing with a poor country. We're dealing with a country that needs a boost, needs a leg up. So benefit of the doubt kind of stuff. But when China wants to play on an even playing field and devalue its currency and all this kind of stuff to, you know, to be a world power and claim it's a world power, then is going to have to play by the rules, right? Unfortunately. I mean, that's actually weirdly one of the things that's unified a lot of Westerners on this whole Trump thing. I have no opinion on the current leadership in America because I've been out for so long. But from what I've seen is that like people are on both sides of the spectrum are kind of in support of what's happening now. That's what I've seen. Thank you, Robert. Crazy Corpseman, for whoever made the comment about super chats, do you get paid for your job? Crazy corpseman. That is a lot more biting and a lot better than what I said. So thank you for that. You have some wits about you. Thank you. Andrew Moore, happy holidays. How worried should I be about going back there with my wife? I'm currently trying to get her out of China. Keep up the good work. This is something I said in my speech yesterday at the excellent subscriber meetup. And this is something I really, really, really have to drive home. Excuse me. What I go through, what Winston goes through, what we do is film videos in China with a reasonably large audience of mostly Westerners. That immediately makes us a target. That means that our life will be much worse than yours. Someone that's probably, and I'm just assuming, Andrew, that you are going over there to hang out, maybe do a little work, maybe do some traveling, maybe visit family. You're fine. I mean, the worst that's going to happen to you is somebody's going to be like, in Chinese, be like, go home foreigner or something like that. And that hurts. But that's pretty much the worst thing that's going to happen to you right now, unless you're some like journalist, basically. So when I commentate about how things are getting negative, I'm talking about grand scheme stuff. I'm talking about things that affect me, not necessarily things that would affect you as someone short-term in China visiting. And by all means, everyone, go visit China. It's an amazing country. It is my love. It's still the country I identify with. I don't look at myself in the mirror and say, damn, look at that Chinese guy. But I grew up there. I spent 10 years of my adult life there. So that is the country that I know. I think in Chinese. I dream in Chinese. I prefer Chinese food. Go see it. It's amazing, right? Just be aware that things are not as positive and hippy-dippy and fun and, you know, daisies and roses as they used to be. But by all means, go check it out. You're fine. No name. Oh my gosh. YouTube's getting super good at hiding really, really bad comments. And the Wumaos are just getting grayed out like crazy. It's really funny. I'm getting attacked. Like, you guys have no idea right now in the chats. I am getting so many freaking Wumao comments in Chinese and in English. And it's really, really funny. But they're getting grayed out. I used to have to like manually go and do that. Okay. Just want to say, no name, just want to say thank you for all your hard work and dedication. You and Winston made my choice to move to Asia when I graduate so much easier. Thank you. You're very, very welcome, no name. You're going to have a great time. Seriously, enjoy it. Maria Acosta, just want to support, love you and Winston. Keep it up. Stay safe. We absolutely will. It's only going to get better from here. Thank you so much, Maria. Really appreciate it. Next, we have Anthony Cavalier. Your opinion. Do you think the CCP will invade ROC? If so, when? I was leaning onto it might be a last-ditch attempt if China suffers an extreme economic failure. Countries in danger of losing legitimacy, legitimate power over their people, will typically do very, very crazy things, brazen things at the end. I don't see that party reaching its end. I see the CCP going through very, very strange and regressive changes, but I don't see it going into a point where it's going to need to claim that victory, except to kind of tell its own people that it's going to constantly. Number two, you have something like the KMT in Taiwan that's always promoted the status quo with China. China is the biggest victory of that election was China, to be honest, because now the status quo can be maintained. China does not want to take back Taiwan. I mean, they do want it, but they don't want to go through the absolute hell and torment that would be for international relations and potential war with the West, and particularly America with the treaty we've signed. I don't think so anymore. At least for the next 20 years. You know, if the KMT stays in power, I think the status quo will always be maintained, unless something very drastic happens, obviously. Happy Supremacy. Yo, hey, Laowinners, what's happening? By the way, guys, go check out Happy Supremacy. They are a half Asian, half white couple, and they are kind of a massive pushback against this weird hate group that really hates me and hates a lot of things about white and Asian couples. They are usually people that are half Asian, half white themselves. Maybe were bullied as children and really are aggressive towards people like me and my wife who are race mixing, right? It's crazy stuff like that. Happy Supremacy is the antidote to that. Very happy couple, super cool. Watch their stuff. I actually did an interview with Winston on their channel, so go check them out. And a lot is happening. Happy Supremacy, a lot is happening. Thank you. Taxi. If you ever come to South Korea, I highly recommend to ride a motorcycle to Jeju Island. Driving along the coastal road is awesome. I've seen Jeju Island. That looks spectacular. We have so many plans for places to ride now. And it's going to be really cool. Well, we're always going to have a China focus on things, but I really can't wait to see some other stuff. Have that kind of virgin lens on things and actually maybe slowly get to understand some places over time as well. Thank you, Taxi. Matthew Fastini, do you think the U.S. pulling back from commitments to NATO, South Korea, etc., will push Japan to go nuclear for its own defense? And how would China respond to Japan ramping up? I doubt we'll see a nuclear Japan. I think we'll see Japan buff up its navy. I think Japan will want to make sure that it doesn't have to be threatened by someone like China. I really doubt it. I mean, that's my uninformed opinion, Matthew. I really think that you're going to see a lot of saber rattling from China, but not really anything to worry about from Japan's perspective. I don't know. It really, honestly, it's like what you said. It depends on what the U.S. does, right? If we pull out of these commitments, which I think is maybe a poor decision, we might see a militarized Japan defensively. I don't think we're going to see a war between Japan and China, if that's the ultimate question you have. Thank you very much, Matthew. This chat is great, Mr. Topcat 2. You guys should do this more and together, please. Believe it or not, what we're going to do is, I'm the first guinea pig for this. There's a topic, then there's a Q&A. Afterwards, it goes up. We're going to do one of these a month for Laowinners, one of them a month for SerpentZA, and he is going to do the same format, about an hour long. I'm going to cut this off in a bit. And then ADVChina as well is probably going to do one with both of us, but more likely is a podcast channel, separate channel, that we will have long form content that will be live. Kind of like H3's podcast, but more China, Asia focused, basically, where we can speak at length with each other. So thank you very much. I'm glad you appreciate this. Robert Score, how much economic suffering is China willing to go through to win a trade war with the U.S. and why? Robert, thank you so much. Very generous. Economic suffering wise, China is not going to want to go through a whole lot of that. I think that's when you're going to start seeing China start to make some concessions, because like I said, the ultimate threat to the party's rule right now in China and ultimate cause of instability would be the economy slowing down, something people have gotten used to fairly recently, that the economy is always going to go up, right? So if this takes a big chunk out of growth, there's no option for China other than to back down and make some concessions to the U.S. Hopefully, for everyone's sake, this does not continue that long. I don't think you're going to... I can't put a date on it, but I really don't think it's going to last much longer, Robert. I don't think China can afford to piss off its own citizens or maybe sweep the dirt under the rug for that long. Eventually, the pile is going to be visible. That's my opinion, Robert. Thank you so much. Sorry. That's it's hard not to read some of these gray comments. They're just very, very funny. Okay. Next we have, oh my Lord. You know, this is really screwing with me, this super chat thing, because it snaps them down and then I don't, wow. Yeah. Just catching up, guys. Give me a oh snap. I believe the next one is from Tim Glenn. It's amazing that a recommended video of Chinese girl eats American Chinese food is turned into this. So glad to be a part of this. Tim, that is why I'm glad that you're a part of this too. That's the transition of content we make. And it's not to say we're not going to do stuff like that as well in the future. You know, it's just, it's so cool what you can do with YouTube with an audience that follows you, because you can be sometimes forgiven for errors. You can grow into something that you might care about more, that your audience might care about more. So yeah, I agree, Tim. That's really awesome. Kyle, I don't even know what's going on. Thanks, lol. You know what, Kyle? You don't need to know what's going on. All you need to know is that I appreciate you and your super chat. That's really nice of you. Appreciate it. Trump with £5. Could you give us, would-be tourists, a rundown of what happens when you get to the border in China of a UK passport, by the way? If you're flying into Hong Kong, you're going to be passing through in Shenzhen. You're going to go into a thing that says visitors. Go through immigration in Hong Kong. You're going to fill out a little piece of paper. So it's got your passport number, your name, expiration date, and your address, intended address in Hong Kong. If you're going to China, you can just write that. When you go through that, you're going to walk toward or get on the blue line of the Hong Kong Metro. You're going to get to the Lohu border. You're going to get out at the border, and you're going to now see a sign that doesn't say visitors, it says foreigners. You're going to get a yellow piece of paper. You're going to write the exact same kind of stuff that you just did on the Hong Kong immigration. But this time you're going to walk up to a Chinese, very differently dressed Chinese border guard. You're going to walk up. There's going to be a glass screen. They're sitting up here. You're down here. In Hong Kong, they're down here, and you're up here. You're given your passport. They look at you. They have a camera. They're going to like facial scan your face, basically. And you're going to give them their passport. They're going to check. They're going to mark your visa, give you a stamp, and you walk in. And that's pretty much it. You walk past that. You're going to either get a taxi or you can get back in the metro in Shenzhen and head to wherever you're going. If you're going to Beijing, you're not going to have to go through the Hong Kong rigmarole. You're going to go land. There's going to be an immigration desk, basically. Same thing. Check your visa. Sometimes I ask you a question about, oh, why did you come to China? How long are you going to stay? That kind of stuff. Shouldn't be an issue. Xiaoling, thank you so much for the $2. Brian Skinner, will you have a meet in LA soon and sell me the white Churchill? I need to match my Prozzy Churchill. Yeah, it's currently sitting in my garage right now. Thank you, Brian. LA meet maybe will happen in February or March. So maybe see you there. Thank you, Brian. Dresinger, 1. Peter Zahan on YouTube says that China's debt-graying population and minorities will cause economic implosion, and the U.S. can't screw up its advantage. Agree? Yeah. I just can say, yeah, that sounds absolutely correct. I don't know who that guy is, but that sounds like that will be. I think it's going to come a lot later than maybe he's implying, or what you're saying in that comment. But that will be the things that need to be addressed before that happens. I'll at least say that. Thank you so much. Old Gringo, are you planning to move out of China? Actually, I can recommend a video for everyone. Go to ADVChina and watch. China is heading for a scary change, I think it's called. It was our second to last video we put out. Has all the information, Old Gringo, and everyone else that's interested. We basically started a company called ADV Media Incorporated. We'll still be China focused, but all 3 of our channels now have a schedule. I will have a video every Wednesday at 5 p.m. PST. Sorry, did I just say 5 p.m.? I'm sorry. At 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. PST, or EST. I'm sorry, I'm literally losing my mind. Anyway, every Monday will be ADVChina at the same time. And then every Friday will be SerpentZA at the same time. So there is a very specific schedule now. And then we are also going to try to do some bigger trips around different countries around the world, as well as do what we're doing now. We'll be back to China to film. We won't be living there super long term. We might spend maybe, we could say up to half a year there, but we're not going to be based out of there necessarily. Anyway, let me de-snap this Snapdragon over here. I'm going to give a clock on this. I'm going to do this till 6:15, and then we're going to cut this off here. I'm going to get through these super chats. So if you have one now, just pop it in. Otherwise, I can get you on the next one. Next stream will be next month. Bethany Runyon, hey there. How is Vivi feeling about your new life you're planning? She's actually super pumped and supportive, and that's why I love that woman so damn much. She's the best woman I've ever met, and the thing is, like, that kind of lifestyle is going to be very difficult to deal with. But it sounds a lot worse than it is, because when I go to film somewhere, I might have enough content for a couple months, right? So if I film somewhere for a month, it might mean I'm back home for a couple months, 24/7 with my family editing, but I'm still in the same house. I'm playing with Olivia, taking care of the other kid, Lucia. She has a name now. So from that perspective, it's almost like better than a 9-to-5 in that I do, work 50, 60 hours a week. But when I do have that downtime, I'm with my family 24/7. So that's how I justify it to myself. That's how we've worked things out. That's how Vivi and I have had this conversation. So thanks. Mr. Top Cat, $5. Thank you so much, Mr. Top Cat. Thanks for answering my question. I'm looking forward to more chats. I'm looking forward to you in the next one. Howard Rourke, it's been 4 years since I lived in China. I'm going back to visit soon. What has changed in those 3 years? Anything I needed to know? It depends on what you're doing. If you're traveling, you don't have to worry about anything. Things have gotten much higher scale. The roads are bigger and better. A lot more traffic, a lot more buildings. You'll notice that maybe some really impoverished areas you saw before are built up now or bulldozed. Just kind of like Churchill Customs, that area is scheduled to be demolished. You know, where we had our garage. I wouldn't worry about anything. You might not get the friendly high foreigner smiles that you did back then, but tips would be just, you know, have fun, have an open mind, avoid conflict, avoid arguments or politically charged debates. Andrew Moore, I'm graduating. Oh, thank you so much, Howard. Andrew Moore, I'm graduating next month and planning on living there 8 to 10 months and leaving during my travel visa limit. Thanks for answering my question. You're going to have an awesome time, Andrew. Thank you so much for popping in the chat and supporting the channel. Xiaoling, $5. How come thank you, by the way, Xiaoling. 谢谢. How come your view of China has changed so much all of a sudden, or could you just not speak your mind when you're in China? It's a little both. I would say that the current leadership has made everything a lot more easy to see its future, like where things are going. It's also, I'm not the kind of person that can just sit back on my laurels and just think about, I have to talk about certain things. It's hard for me to say this. I have to talk about certain things that I care about, or that I think people should know about. And I think one of my main goals is to distinguish Chinese people and the country that I love, this beautiful nation, and the government and what's happening now in nationalism. And it might seem a bit skewed because I'm this white guy talking about China, but that's my perspective. It's my 10 years perspective, right? So I feel like I owe it to people not to be sensationalized, to actually, you know, express what I think is happening and what I think people are getting wrong, both positive and negative. So yeah, thank you so much, Sheldon. Grady Gills, I just lost your comment. All the best to you and your family for the holidays, and wishing a much smoother delivery experience for Vivi than the first time. Grady, number one, thank you so much. Number two, you have no idea how relieved I am that we don't have to go through that bloodbath nightmare of a Chinese hospital. If you guys haven't seen that video, that was my last video, I believe I put out on last Wednesday. Absolute nightmare of a situation. So thank you so much, Grady. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot smoother. I don't want to jinx myself, but I don't believe in luck. So appreciate that. Thanks. Brad Allen with $20. Thank you so much. Super cool, Brad. If you had a question, I'm sorry. Try to pop it in there. Okay, cool. Oh, sorry. Alan Williamson. Cheers. Oh, no, you guys are going to make me finish this, huh? Whew. Thank you, Alan, for the $10. Thank you for making me drink that. Trevor Hoffman, take this and get a freaking beer with your wife. Well deserved. Thank you so much, Trevor. I actually shouldn't be drinking anything. I limited myself to this because I'm pretty sick. But thank you. Thank you. Maybe I'll get some like dumplings or something. And my wife can't drink, obviously, because the kid will have, you know, Lucia will have fetal alcohol syndrome. But thank you, Trevor. Really appreciate that. All right, cool. I'm going to be wrapping this up now. I want to say thank you so much to everyone that was in this chat. It's really fun. I hope you guys like the new setup. I got a new little live stream camera, and I got the I got a new microphone as well. Hopefully that was an improvement. John Quilts, last question. Have you ever seen Winston clean shaven? I have, and it's beautiful. Thank you so much, Laowinners, and I will catch you on the next one.